Warriors, welcome to another great interview. Now, today I'm interviewing Garrett Saltpeter. He is the founder and CEO of Newfit. Garrett has a really interesting background. He's an engineer, an entrepreneur. He's developed a really marvelous device for training and rehabilitating initially athletes and now patients. He's worked with professional and collegiate athletes in baseball, football, hockey. He's worked with Olympians. He's now worked with patients, helping them get out of pain, improve strength, improve mobility. His company, Newfit, is also a seminar sponsor. Now, these sponsorships are a great way for all of you to learn more about the devices and products that I use every day as part of my rehabilitation and my maintenance of strength. I love my Newfit. It is energizing. It is a wonderful adjunct to my exercise to maintain my strength and my mobility. So, Garrett, let's get started. First, let's have a quick overview of the Newfit technology, because not everyone will have heard of you. I know I talk about you a lot and how much I love my Newbie and my Newfit, but not everyone will have heard of you before. So please give us a quick overview.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Walls. And I'm really honored to be on here and talking with the Walls Warriors. And in terms of the Newfit and the Newbie device here, the biggest difference between this and most of the other types of modalities out there that are utilizing electricity and working the muscles is that this is a direct current stimulation device. And what that allows us to do is really two main things. If we're working with MS patients or patients who have lost function because of other neurological injuries or neurodegenerative diseases, it allows us to do this mapping process. So we can actually take an electrode and scan around on somebody's body and identify precisely which neurological pathways are inhibited or deficient or where the issues are, so that we know exactly where to apply the stimulation. And then when we apply that stimulation, because of the unique properties of this direct current signal, we're able to, and it sounds a little bit counterintuitive at first blush here, but we're able to bypass a lot of the muscle contractions in order to speak more directly, more powerfully, and more precisely to the nervous system, so that we can tap into the body's capacity for neuroplastic change and change the underlying and improve the underlying neurological signals that control our muscles and regulate movement and strength and range of motion and coordination and sensation. And by using this type of current, we're able to tap into the nervous system at that level to make changes that typically come faster and typically are more significant or more meaningful over time.
I stress this. This is such a powerful tool to speed the rehabilitation for people who have neuromuscular disorders. So I know we've done some intensive MS boot camps. Can you tell us a little bit about how they work and some of the results that you're seeing?
So a lot of people, if they hear an interview like this or hear about a friend who's used the Newbie device somewhere else, they're intrigued and wish to try it. And so there's a few different ways to do that. One is, if you're looking at this, we can share our website link and everything to find certified providers, and perhaps there might be someone in your area. If there isn't, however, there are some other options. And so we've had a lot of Walls Warriors actually come to our facility in Austin, Texas for these weekend intensives or weekend boot camps where MS patients have come and they've done 2 sessions a day. So that's why it's an intensive. We're doing a lot of work, 2 sessions a day, Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and having group educational and learning opportunities over lunch, and Walls protocol compliant lunches, I might add also. And
Perfect.
yeah, that's right. And these have been really cool because they've given people an opportunity to come and experience these treatments. And for many of them, they've actually noticed significant progress even in the first 3 days, which for some people who have been on a plateaued or haven't made progress in months or years, it can be a little bit surprising. But we've had people notice improvements in drop foot and being able to improve their gait because they can walk more smoothly because they're able to lift up their foot, or they notice new sensations in their hands or feet, or better dexterity and ability to use their thumbs and fingers to open doors or manipulate objects or bring food to their mouths. So we've seen people make progress, and some of them have, wanted to continue doing treatments, and so they actually have rented or purchased the device. And then our physical therapists, we have a team of people who work remotely with patients around the world, will continue to make custom programs for those people. And many of them now we've seen have been able to continue to make progress for months afterwards. And we've gotten a couple videos. We got a video from a woman who sent us. She had been here, and we saw her walking, with tremendous difficulty with a cane or a crutch in each arm, and she sent us a video about 8 weeks later of her walking without any hand support out to the mailbox and back from her house. And so, I mean,
Mhm.
really, really cool. We saw another video of a woman who had come to our weekend intensive, and she had, a really interesting story where she was actually a very accomplished pianist playing the piano in her early 20s, and that's when she started to have MS symptoms, and she had to give up. She was going to Juilliard, I mean, like, the premier musical school, right? And she had to withdraw because of her MS symptoms. And now, 20 years later, doing work with the Newbie device on her hands, she sent us a video wearing the electric gloves. So her gloves were hooked up to the machine. She was getting the current in there, and she was actually playing her scales on the piano. And it just moved us to chills when we were watching that video. So we've seen some really cool things happen. It definitely, some of these things happen quickly, but some of them definitely take time. So I
Mhm.
don't mean to imply that everything comes in 3 days, or the 3 days is all you need. But often it's a good indicator of how quickly someone might and how significantly someone might be able to respond, and it gives us a sense of what opportunity there might be for longer term progress.
Now, for all of you who are listening, people have been so intrigued that I made such dramatic recovery in a year's time, and eSTEM was certainly part of that. It was daily work with a physical therapist, and then 3 times a week work with a physical therapist for 4 years. And I still work with physical therapists on a regular basis. I still check in on my eSTEM program. Getting more muscular strength and coordination requires that the muscles and the nervous system do work in effort on that person's part. And the benefit of eSTEM is that it accelerates, it doesn't replace, but it accelerates those gains. You still have to be willing to do the work. We for people who are paralyzed, who've had a complete transection of their spinal cord, doing eSTEM can do great things for you metabolically and quality of life. So it can still be really, really helpful, even if you've had a severe spinal cord injury, so that your rehab doc say you're never going to walk again. We have people who still do eSTEM just for all the metabolic and quality of life benefits. Now, I heard that you've got some published articles, peer-reviewed articles, either in process. Can you give me an update on that?
Yes, so we've had a couple cool developments actually since you and I last got to catch up, and we had our first journal article published in a peer-reviewed journal on the Newbie device, and it speaks to the effect on muscle hypertrophy or reducing muscle atrophy. So over time, well, there's really interesting extreme example of muscle atrophy is seen in astronauts or people who are in a weightless environment. If you're unloaded for as little as 1 day, muscles will start to atrophy. So if we're not using muscles over time, they atrophy, they lose their size and strength, and that's a problem, of course, for function. Less strength is less opportunity to lift objects, to support ourselves, to catch our balance, to get around the world. And also, less muscle mass is a problem for longevity. Muscle is very important for regulating blood sugar and the metabolic health, inflammation. I mean, there's a lot that muscle mass does beyond just its strength, mechanical function. There's a lot that it does health-wise too. So we've seen some really cool evidence in this study. I'm happy to share the link also that shows that the effect of using the Newbie is very, very similar to the effect of traditional resistance exercise. So traditional resistance exercise, the gold standard is using something like 75 to 80% of 1 rep max. So that means if you could lift 100 pounds in a movement, then you'd be doing like 75 or 80 pounds. If 100 pounds is like the most you could lift, you'd be doing 75 to 80, and maybe you do that for 6 or 10 repetitions or something like that. And with the Newbie, we're able to do no external load, put the pads on, and do the same movement. So in this first study, it was a bicep curl. It was just lifting the arm on one side, lifting the arm on the other side, and they saw similar effects in terms of looking at muscle cell, the movement of fluids inside the muscle, looking at ultrasound, and they saw similar changes in fatigue and soreness. Excuse me, in that acute phase, looking right after exercise. And then the next study that is just about to be published. So I won't share the punchline yet. I won't share the final results. But the next study. Excuse me. Let me grab a sip of water here. The next study is then looking at what happens over a full training cycle. So if we're using it twice a week for 6 to 8 weeks, comparing traditional resistance trainings, that 75 to 80% maximum weight, versus using the Newbie with little to no external weight, what happens over a full training cycle in terms of muscle strength and muscle growth, muscle mass hypertrophy. And so that's coming out soon. So I won't share the details, but I will say that it's positive.
Exciting
And
stuff. We can tell from your face. It's exciting stuff.
yes. And then there's another study that we've done a pilot work with a group in the metropolitan New York area. They've got some offices in New York City, some on Long Island. They got a few clinics around there. Doing a group working with them to look at neuropathy patients. And what's really interesting about this group is that they do a lot of very sophisticated measurements with EMG and nerve conduction testing. So that literally would mean putting little needles into the nerves and measuring how much electrical activity is happening and measuring the time for a signal to transmit from the top of a nerve to the bottom of that nerve. And sometimes it's electrodes on the surface of the skin, sometimes it's needles for the more precise measurements. And there, in this pilot, which is being expanded now, and we have IRB approval for a much larger study, in that pilot, they saw some really cool outcomes, like nerve conduction velocity increasing, which indicates a growth in or regeneration of myelin in patients who have had damage from neuropathy. And although the mechanism might be different than MS, it is a neurodegenerative, process, and there's a lot of overlap, a lot of similarity too. So we also had one case where there was a man in his 80s who had nerve damage from a virus, and he had lost some function in one of his legs, and they measured over time. They made changes in him. They kept going. They were seeing progress after the initial 12 weeks, and so they kept going, and they kept seeing progress at 6 months. And they measured these changes that showed collateral sprouting, which means the growth of new nerves in someone who was in his 80s, which is previously unfathomable that people could grow not only new nerves generally, but at such an age as well. So we're seeing some really cool things happening as a response to these treatments with the Newbie, and I think that it really speaks to this concept of focusing more on stimulating the nervous system and creating those types of changes and harnessing the power of direct current and all those topics we were talking about at the beginning.
Let's talk about heart rate variability. I know there's a protocol that I personally like a lot, the Master Reset. Have you guys done anything with how the Newbie affects heart rate variability?
So we have seen some really cool outcomes there too, and we've used a couple of different measurement tools. One is this wrist wearable device that I have on my wrist called a BioStrap. We did a commercial study with them. So that was just basically looking at what's happening in the clinic. Not the peer-reviewed, but still rigorous methodology, and we can share that. And then we've used an even more sophisticated device where you have electrodes on each arm, and so it's measuring the electrical activity throughout from one hand to the other, so across the whole chest, and looking at multiple measurements of heart activity. And in both of these, we've seen that using the Newbie generally, and specifically this master reset protocol, has helped people increase heart rate variability dramatically. And that's important for people who don't know, because it's a proxy for the vagus nerve, not Las Vegas, but Vegas, VAGUS nerve, which is the main pathway for the parasympathetic nervous system. So I think, if even if people don't know what that means, I think we all probably understand that there's, having too much stress or not being able to keep up with the stresses and challenges of our lives, and spending too much time in that fight or flight state is problematic for health, is problematic for exacerbations of autoimmune conditions, is problematic for a lot of the lifestyle diseases that we face. And the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite branch of the nervous system. It's the rest and digest, or the attend and befriend, or feed and breed, that regulates all of the organs of the body to work towards greater health and counteract the negative effects of stress. So being able to see these changes here, and it's typically a 10 or 20 minutes, sort of like a guided meditation. You have the machine on and you're breathing, and doing that generally can be good. And we've measured that, and then we've measured it with the machine, with the Newbie on, doing the master reset, and that effect is amplified, times 3, times 4, times 5, in terms of the increase that we see statistically in heart rate variability.
And we have to be in the parasympathetic state to repair. If we want to repair our myelin, which, if you have MS, we're all about what can we do to improve our remyelination. So it's diet, meditation, the master reset, I think, is a great adjunct. So neuroplasticity, adaptation, functional improvement. So those are the things that we're talking about here. When I went to medical school, we were taught that, the brain cells you got when you're born, that's all you're going to get. You won't get any more. If you screw up and you damage them, you're out of luck. And, there's not a whole lot that you can do. What Garrett and I have been talking about is there is so much that you can do. You've heard me for years talk about diet. You've heard me talk about exercise. The Newfit is a great way to accelerate that neuroplasticity. You want to talk a little bit more about the autonomic nervous system? Do you have any more comments about that, Garrett?
So I think the main point that I would like to get across on that is that just the dynamics of the autonomic nervous system, the spending too much time in fight or flight, or being able to balance it with more of this rest and digest state, is so relevant, because those are the parts of the nervous system that control heart rate and digestion of food, elimination of waste, reproductive function. And so many of the lifestyle diseases that we have are related to blood pressure and indigestion and issues with waste elimination and constipation and fertility. And those are all the things that are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So it's super relevant. I want to make sure people understand that it's not just some ivory tower concept, but it actually affects us in daily life and can have a dramatic impact on our health.
And the longer you have your autoimmune disorder, whether it's multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, psoriasis, the more likely you are to have autonomic nervous system dysfunction, cold hands, difficulty with your blood pressure, and improving your heart rate variability, your vagal stimulation is, I think, a very important tool for addressing that autonomic nervous system dysfunction. Okay, Garrett, we should be wrapping this up. Do you have any closing words of wisdom for people?
If I could just share one last thing, I think I would love to speak for a moment about that topic of neuroplasticity. And it's interesting. I mean, obviously we're grateful that we have some durability, that our brains just don't flip flop and change moment to moment because we want to remember things and things like that. But fortunately, we do have this opportunity to make changes and to restore function that's been lost. And in order to tap into that power, it typically takes the equivalent amount of effort as it would take to train to be a professional athlete or an Olympic gold medalist. It typically would take hours of focused work every day for not just weeks and weeks, but months and months and years and years. And the reason for that is that it takes a lot of energy and resources for the body to rebuild and remodel these neurological pathways in the brain, the spinal cord, and the periphery. And we have to not only be healthy enough to have that the extra energy and resources available, but we also have to get enough input so that the brain basically gets the point that, look, this is an important pathway. We're going to be using this enough. It's worth investing long-term energy and resources to upgrade that so it's available in the future. So it normally takes that amount of time. And first of all, I think I want everyone who's thinking about how to restore function because of MS, that's been lost because of MS or other neurodegenerative diseases, to start thinking of themselves as athletes. If you're already a Walls warrior, that's part of it. I mean, really think of yourself as an athlete, even if you didn't identify as such previously. And then, where technology like the Newbie and where Newfit might be able to come in and help you is to help you find a way to train more efficiently and effectively as an athlete, to be able to get more bang for your buck, so that each session, in a 45-minute session, you might be accomplishing as much as might normally take 2 or 3 hours. So it's still a process. It still takes a lot of time and effort. You still have to reach that critical mass of input in order to drive changes. And this can help you do it faster and more efficiently. So there's still a lot to do, but the difference between if you can accomplish in 18 months what might normally take 24 or 36, that is, still an improvement. So that's the type of perspective that I'd like to bring to this. And I definitely would encourage everyone listening to identify as an athlete. Treat your body like an athlete.
Okay, closing words. How do people find you? So give us your website, and we'll get make sure we have the links as well in the show notes. But where do people find you, Garrett?
So if you're interested in learning more specifically about how Newfit can help with restoring function because of MS or other neurodegenerative diseases, go to new.fit. That's neu.fit/walls. And there's a landing page there with some more information and a presentation and a link to find providers near you and ways to get in touch with our team. We're also, in terms of social media platforms, most active on Instagram, and it's Newfit RFP for Rehab Fitness Performance, NEUFIT RFP. And we'd love to interact with you on direct messages or through our website, and you can reach out to our team. We're happy to support you however we can, even if it's introducing you to a therapist in your city.
Okay, that was wonderful. Now, all of you who are watching and listening, please tell us, what was the takeaway? What is the one thing that you learned listening to Garrett? What is the one thing that you're going to begin doing as part of your transformation? And personally, I'm rooting that you'll decide you're going to be an athlete and begin slowly training up your body and your nervous system to this new life that you visualize. I also invite you to go to my website, terrywalls.com, sign up for my newsletter so you can get the research updates and learn about the other products that I use every day as part of my rehabilitation and my commitment to have the best life that is possible. And once again, Garrett, thank you so much for all of your work, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Walls. It's been a pleasure.